Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. We're just 3 days away from a government shutdown because Congress still has not passed its annual appropriations bills. The Senate is considering a short-term funding bill, but some of President Biden's requests are not included. Here's NTD's Melina Wisecup with more.
Lawmakers are now working to fund the government with a bill that will expire on December 16th, a last-minute sprint that's now become routine in Congress.
It seems like every year it's pushed into the last minute to fund the government. It seems like it wastes a lot of money. Why do you think this is the case?
Well, organization is the key to winning. I learned that in my 40 years of coaching. Not a lot of organization goes on up here. All these funding bills are held hostage for political advantage, and that's what this happens here. We go down to the wire, seems like every time. It is a situation that's controlled this place up here for a long time, and I'd like to see it change, but I'm just one. But a lot of money is wasted. But there always seems to be something put in with the bill.
Included in this must-pass bill, $12 billion more for Ukraine. While this White House request was granted, Biden's other billion-dollar requests were not. Lawmakers did not include in this bill more emergency money for COVID-19 or monkeypox, but the expiration date of December 16th is something we can expect to see how some House Republicans push back against, especially those members from the House Freedom Caucus. They preferred a temporary funding bill that would expire later in January. This way, Republicans would have more control over 2023's annual budget if they were to take back the majority in Congress. But Democrats do have the majority in the House, so as long as they have all the support from the Democrats in their caucus, this can easily pass the House, and it is expected to pass the Senate later this week as well. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
What is the cost of Biden's student loan debt cancellations? The Congressional Budget Office estimates that the price tag is about $430 billion over the next 30 years. Biden's plan, announced in August, involves providing up to $10,000 to $20,000 in debt relief to borrowers who earn less than $125,000 per year. The Congressional Budget Office director told Republican lawmakers that the projected figure is still an estimate. The cost will depend on future economic conditions and on how the loan terms are modified in the future. With the economy top of mind for most voters heading into the 2022 midterms, we recently spoke with Florida Congressman Carlos Gimenez. Here's a look.
I want to ask you about the economy right now. You touched on that, inflation. What policies do you think need to change to get the country back on the right track?
Well, first of all, Congress cannot spend like drunken sailors. And actually, we're giving drunken sailors a good reputation. I mean, Congress is spending that much money. So we need to tap down government spending. We know that a lot of the inflation is caused by rising fuel and energy costs. We need to unleash American energy. Right now, the Biden administration is bent on destroying American energy and making us dependent on foreign powers for our energy, which is insane. And so, those are some of the issues. That's some of the ways we can start to reduce prices and make things more affordable for everyday Americans.
If the spending is undermining the interest rate hikes, where do we eventually go from here?
We need to stop spending, all right, and we need to cut wasteful government spending, and that's one of the things we want to do. And so when we get into in power, hopefully we will not have these trillion-dollar programs that actually do the opposite of what the bill says. Like the anti-inflation bill is actually inflationary. And so there's, billions of dollars I think are completely wasted that put a burden on our children because we're going to have to pay the debt, and then putting the burden on everyday Americans today because of rising inflation, which is fueled by this out-of-control spending in Congress.
Congressman, one of the important topics that you mentioned is immigration. I can't think of a better person to talk about this issue. Right now, you represent a lot of folks that are coming here from Cuba, Venezuela. You also have a personal story when it comes to immigration. How do we make sure that we're letting the right people in and sending the right people back?
Well, I think you have to reinstall the Trump era Remain in Mexico policy. The Remain in Mexico policy just said you remain in Mexico until we had your hearing. And then those folks that have a legitimate claim to get into the United States are allowed into the United States. What happened is now everybody's coming through. And so, yes, there are people that have legitimate claims. They're fleeing tyranny, Cuba, Venezuela, etc. But there's a whole bunch of other people that are here for other reasons. There's also about 1 million people, 500,000 that we know of, and another 500,000 we know nothing about that have never been even intercepted. We don't even know who they are. All right, and they're entering the country. So even though I represent a large number of Cubans and Venezuelans that understand what it is to flee tyranny, because I'm one of them. I actually left Cuba when I was 7 years old. We also understand that it needs to be done in an orderly, legal fashion.
Congressman Jimenez, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sounding alarms over China, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle send letters to the Biden administration. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more.
Ramping up oversight of U.S. investments going into China. That's what lawmakers, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, are urging President Biden to do in a Tuesday letter. Congress has been considering legislation that would give the U.S. government new powers to bar billions of dollars in investments from going to China. But the proposal was stripped from the CHIPS Act passed in August, and now it still awaits further negotiations. But lawmakers say our national security cannot afford to wait, citing an urgent need to protect supply chains and intellectual property. And thus, as 51 Republican lawmakers also sent a letter this week warning the administration of Chinese threats. Their focus, meanwhile, is on China buying up American farmland. Lawmakers led by Congressman Carlos Gimenez point to a Chinese manufacturer's acquisition of land just miles away from a U.S. Air Force base in North Dakota. They're asking the administration to act on potential security risks, noting that the land purchase puts the Chinese firm in, quote, the ideal location to closely monitor and intercept military activity. And as these purchases raise red flags on the Hill, lawmakers are introducing legislation to ban foreign adversaries from buying land anywhere near U.S. military bases, though further actions are needed to make that into law. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
Vice President Kamala Harris is on a trip to Asia. She's leading the U.S. delegation to the state funeral of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was assassinated in July. Here's what she said about Abe.
It was he who coined the term of free and open Indo-Pacific. And as a member of the Indo-Pacific region, as America, we cherish those principles and we stand by them. And it is part of the bond that forms the alliance between the United States and Japan.
During her meeting with the current Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida on Monday, Harris discussed efforts to promote a free and open Indo-Pacific. According to the White House, Harris affirmed the U.S. ironclad commitment to maintaining Japan's national defense and to counter, quote, China's aggressive and irresponsible provocations in the Taiwan Strait. And then on Thursday, the vice president will visit South Korea's demilitarized zone bordering North Korea. She will reportedly tour sites, meet with service members, and receive a briefing from United States commanders. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.